Hello, everybody. My name is Bryce Williams, and welcome to my student presentation. Today, I'm going to talk about TypeScript. Now, we may ask ourselves, well, what is TypeScript? TypeScript was actually introduced back in October 1st, 2012, which makes it 9 years ago after 2 years of internal development at Microsoft. Now, according to the homepage of TypeScript, it says TypeScript adds additional syntax to JavaScript to support a tighter integration with your editor. Catch errors early in your editor. So this is pretty straightforward. TypeScript works closely with JavaScript to help us find errors early on in our code, so we don't have to deal with all the problems at the end of our project, which makes it very easy to work with. Secondly, TypeScript code converts to JavaScript, which runs anywhere JavaScript runs, in a browser or on Node.js or Deno, and in your apps. So pretty much anywhere JavaScript runs, you can run TypeScript there. And lastly, TypeScript understands JavaScript and uses type inference to give you great tooling without additional code. Now, these three elements work closely together to help us improve our experience in JavaScript and in TypeScript as well. Now, let's look at the key differences between TypeScript and JavaScript. So JavaScript is a scripting language, as we all know, and TypeScript, on the other hand, is a superset of JavaScript, meaning it's a layer around JavaScript with more methods. So it actually builds itself around this JavaScript language. And TypeScript needs to be compiled, meaning that anything that is written in TypeScript needs to be transformed into JavaScript using a compiler. On the other hand, JavaScript can run on its own. TypeScript supports prototyping. Now, prototyping is a design pattern that allows cloning objects. Next up is types and interfaces. Now, types, as we all know, are numbers and strings, arrays, stuff like this. And an interface is defined with the keyword interface, and it can include properties and method declarations using a function or an arrow function. So TypeScript supports both of these, but JavaScript, at least when TypeScript was launched, didn't support neither of these. The last one is pretty simple. TypeScript is ideal for working on larger projects, like if you're working in a company or looking at someone else's big projects. And JavaScript is ideal for working on smaller projects, such as personal projects or school team assignments and stuff like that. Now, how can we use TypeScript? Well, first, we need to install Node.js. And after that, we need to install a TypeScript compiler because, as it was mentioned earlier, TypeScript needs to be compiled in order for it to be run. So in this case, we're going to install tsnode. And lastly, we need to install Visual Studio Code because TypeScript and Visual Studio Code were actually developed by Microsoft. So it's the ideal environment for TypeScript to be run. Now, that being said, I'm going to show you how exactly TypeScript is used with a few examples. Now that we have everything installed, we're going to open up VS Code And just a few things that I forgot to mention. First is that TypeScript actually comes with VS Code, so we don't have to do any installings. But there is one thing that we do have to install, and that is TSC. So after we're finished installing Node.js and TS Node, we will have to install TSC as well. So just to keep that in mind, we'll move on to the example. So first we're gonna create a file. So I'm just gonna do that. New file and save. Name that the classic hello world .ts. So TS is obviously TypeScript, so we're going to create a TypeScript file. So we're going to save that. Now there's a blank file, and we're going to fill that in with TypeScript code. So our objective is to print out hello world in TypeScript. So we're going to put let message. So we're going to declare a variable, and you might notice that this is already different from JavaScript. So we're going to follow up with string. So message string equals. So here we declared this variable as a string. So you might remember that TypeScript, you can assign types to a variable. So here it's going to be a string because it's hello world. So we're going to type in hello world. And since we have to display that to the terminal, we're going to put in console.log parentheses message, which is hello world, and that's all. So in order for this to work, this is where we let the compiler do its magic. So we're going to call a terminal, a new one, and we're going to type in TSC, which I talked about just now, that we have to install. And TSC hello world.ts. So TSC is going to compile the code and turn it into a JS file, JavaScript file. So TSC followed up with the file name in TypeScript. So we're going to enter, actually we're going to have to save this in order for it to run correctly. So now that we've saved it, we can run it, and sure enough, here's the new JavaScript file. So we could tell the difference between these two files. There's a big difference actually. So here it was let, but it changed into a var, and as I have explained, there's the type declarations that are different. So so to run this, actually, we're going to use node, and we're going to type in the hello world.js. So this time we're going to run the the JavaScript file. So we created the code in TypeScript, and what it does is, the good thing about that is we can find errors early on in the code. And then when we're done, making sure that there's no errors, we can compile that into a JavaScript file without any problems. I think that's a very good thing. And so we run this, the node hello world.js, and it displays what it's supposed to display, hello world. So this is the example of how to use TypeScript, and I hope that you all enjoyed, and thank you very much.